Okay, I think it's close enough at 11 o'clock. We can go ahead and get this kicked off. And so first off, thank you everybody for joining the Overcoming a Crisis webinar. This is one of the 5 webinars we've been doing this week in the Crisis Mode webinar series. This is the 5th one. We like to think they left the best for last. So this is awesome. Thank you all for joining. I know it's earlier for some of you than others. We have a great panel on here. We have 4 different breweries. 6 guys going to give their insights. This is awesome. I'm pumped for this. So just a little housekeeping duty. Everybody that's watching this is going to be on mute. But if you have a question, please go ahead and ask a question with the Q&A button at the bottom. We have somebody from our team monitoring that, so we'll be able to get those questions to me. And at the end, we're going to leave some time for some Q&A. Also, this is being recorded, so if you have to step out or if you miss this, you can certainly catch up. It's going to be on YouTube. That's where we have the other 5 webinars as well. So if you did miss one of those webinars, you can go to YouTube and catch up on all the ones that occurred this week. There's a lot of great content. So with that, we'll go ahead and get this started. My name is Elliot. I'm the digital marketing manager with Ecos. And we are joined with some really great breweries, great insights. These guys are jam-packed with experience, so this is going to be a great discussion. We're going to break it down into 2 parts. The first part is going to talk about how did we get here in this pandemic? What kind of adjustments and kind of new plans that these breweries have to make during this pandemic, and then also what's the future look like? What's the new normal going to be moving forward? And so, without further ado, like I said, we have a great lineup of breweries, literally coast to coast. So I'll start with the East Coast and move west as the sun flows. Out of Worcester, Massachusetts, we have Wormtown Brewing, and we're delighted to be joined by Ben, their brewmaster and co-founder, and Carrie, their chief financial officer. Moving further west in Greeley, Colorado, we have Weldwerks Brewing, and we're joined by Eric, their director of retail operations. Moving just a tiny bit further west in Denver, Colorado, we have Ratio Beerworks, and we're joined by Jason, who is their brewmaster and co-founder. And all the way on the West Coast, probably drinking coffee while talking about beer, are in San Diego, California, Societe Brewing Company. And we're joined by Mike, their VP of operations, and Teddy, their director of brewing operations. So that's the starting lineup we have for today. And like I said, these guys are great. They have a ton of insight. We got a lot of great questions beforehand, so I'm sure we'll get a lot of great questions during this conversation. And so before we start off, like I said, this section we're gonna talk about the how did we get here in the pandemic. And before I pose the question to the group, I'm going to go ahead and we have a poll for everybody. If you want to go ahead and fill this out, you can see it popped up on your screen here. What tactics have helped your business the most during COVID-19? And so you can choose multiple of these. And so we're curious to see kind of what was those tactics that everybody used to help them get through this pandemic. If you want to answer that, we'll get those answers in and something to think about. But while we're doing that, we're going to go ahead and talk to the panelists about what they did during this time during the pandemic. So the main question for this round, we're going to go through and they're all going to answer this question, and we'll loop back and we'll talk about the new normal. But basically, how have they adapted during the pandemic? Did they take part in to-go orders, delivery? How did they work with local regulations? Were there any creative marketing executions done at this time? And how are you managing team morale moving forward? And so with the same theme of moving east to west, we'll go ahead and start with Ben at Wormtown.
All right, I like this east to the west thing. Thank you for that. So I think like every brewery, we're taking the adaptation as quickly and fast as we can and open to all options in order to provide us with the most success. Small amount of background about Wormtown Brewery. We're a regional packaging brewery, so our focus has been on distribution of draft bottles and cans over the last 10 years. But draft beer was always our lead package. So with the loss of all the bars and restaurants and at least the people consuming beer in our tap room, we've really focused on bottles and cans as really our only source of revenue, with a little bit of to-go sales from our tap room. A couple weeks ago, the state of Massachusetts did allow breweries to do some deliveries, but we have not taken that up yet. We're still relying on our distribution partners to get the beer out there into the hands of retailers and allow them to do deliveries if they have that option, or in some areas, home delivery services like Drizzly are available. And we've been in contact with them to make sure that if those stores have us as a selection, we're on their list of things that the consumer can put on their list and actually get delivered to their house. So really it's more of a focus on parts of our business that weren't as big for our volume as draft beer was, more than creating new things and going into areas that we don't know about or we're uncomfortable in. So thankfully we have a rotary bottling and canning line, and we were able to just spend more hours on those every week, and also do some maintenance on the keg line that was kind of needed.
Perfect. So we'll jump over to Carrie. Did you want to chime in on some things that you guys had to do during this time to pivot?
Sure. I mean, my focus is primarily on the finance side. So, you know, the admin team and everybody's been focusing primarily on, you know, looking at reforecasting, you know, the things that Ben was speaking to, trying to quantify what we're looking at for e-commerce changes, obviously with the loss of on-premise, and then what kind of increases we may see off-premise in different package configurations. So primarily been focusing on cash flow, reforecasting, obviously working with all the federal legislation that's out there, SBA loans. Everybody's familiar with all the acronyms by now, the payroll protection program. That's primarily what we've been working on, pretty much doing our cash reforecasts on a daily, every other day basis, and financial reforecasts at least weekly, if not multiple times per week. So that's really been it's sort of accelerated a lot of the stuff we ordinarily would do and put a lot more urgency on it. And with new changes, just trying to quantify that as it comes in.
Perfect. Thanks. And before we jump to Eric next, we got some results back from that poll. So it looked like 56 of the people said distribution, 52% said to-go orders, 48% said e-commerce, and 36% said delivery. So you feel like that's about on par with what you're seeing, Eric?
Yeah, I think, you know, at Weldwerks, kind of going back to when all this first was hitting, things definitely were happening quickly. And I think we were somewhat fortunate. One of our co-owner and head brewer, Neil, went to Pastry Town earlier in March and was kind of feeling the sense of COVID-19 coming down. And I think that kind of helped us to start putting in our minds, at least, things might be changing. And then they changed pretty rapidly. We decided to shut down our tap room a few days before the governor here in Colorado just shut down all bars and restaurants, just out of kind of the abundance of caution and being able to figure out what we can do next. And that's where we pivoted, and seeing from like the results, just the different tools, mainly, you know, starting in our tap room, just looking at what we can do with using our current software that we use for our POS. We use Square. They had an online tool, so that was one of our first main goals, was to set up an online store and just do to-go orders that way. We still allowed people to walk up and do that sort of thing and order beer, but it quickly evolved. Now we operate this whole kind of drive-through process to get, you know, people in, get their orders, and then move them out and do everything safely. And then, we also kept having to pivot during the changes. So, you know, when we first decided to shut down our distribution arm, everything was normal for at least the few days before the governor shut down all the bars and restaurants. And before the governor, started to do that, even Denver started to do things, which is one of a big city that we distribute to, and have a lot of accounts. And so we were always pivoting on that front too, on the distribution side of, if we lose a lot of our draft accounts, what do we do next? Our sales team just pivoted really well to work with just different accounts that were off-prem accounts, to continue to get liquid flowing to them. And that's where we also switched on our production side and packaging, is just focusing more on canning everything. And then we did do some keg sales as well of some of the fresh beer we put out, or we're going to put out. We were also in the midst of weeks away from having our big 5th anniversary celebration. So we had everything ready, the big tent and all this stuff. And we clearly had to cancel that. And so we had, of course, all this beer that's supposed to be coming out, and some bottles and all this stuff. And so we just moved fast was the main idea. Is instead of just kind of sitting and waiting to see, well, what might happen next, is what can we do right now to kind of survive and ride the wave. And things kept changing. I mean, new orders kept coming out, and eventually, we were all under a stay-at-home order, and what that meant for different accounts and everything like that. And what that meant for staff morale. I mean, that was another big important piece of ours. So on our tap room, we have a weekly tap room meeting, and we decided that we would do something, just like this, we're going to meet virtually, but keep that going. We still have our staff that was, on the front lines. We were able to move a few people over to different areas to kind of absorb the kind of less work that, less amount of staff that we needed in the tap room. So we still needed some there to kind of fulfill all these to-go orders and run the drive-through area, but we didn't need as many. So we were able to put some in packaging and production, and someone in sales to get that experience and train them up. And also do that just so if someone were to get sick, we would have people cross-trained. And that was the big thing that we looked at too, is just making sure we can, if someone were have to go out for 2 weeks, that we could fill that spot in with someone else. So, but meeting weekly with our taproom team, I think has really helped with the morale that we're seeing and the change in their job. This isn't the job they signed up to do. They signed up to be working with people and talking about beer and all this, and now they're switching to, almost kind of like a liquor store type person, where they still get to talk a little bit, but it's well, what's the name on the order? Let me go get it, and that sort of thing. So it's been great when we're taking, different opportunities as they come.
Yeah, I like how you said you were doing virtual meetings with your taproom team. Were you guys using Zoom? Was it similar to this?
We've used Zoom, and we use Google Meets as well. So we've tried just different ones, but yeah, very similar to this though, of being able to see everyone and chat and just kind of go through what's going on.
Perfect. Thanks, Eric. And Jason, Pivot is your middle name right now, huh? You had to make a big pivot.
That's right. Yeah, I'm at Ratio Beerworks, right in the heart of Denver, Colorado. And one thing I know we talked before, we are a bit different than the other 3 breweries on this, in that we were not in cans or bottles before this. So it was, while it's hit through everyone, we had an immediate thought as all the news was coming down of, wow, we could go to a 0% sales. I'd say we were about 99% in draft, and we're self-distributed. We have no distributor. So that meant a lot of quick, okay, what are we going to do? And part of your poll was, one, quickly was the to-go orders and getting online going, at least for crowlers. That was something we could move through in that sense. And we use Arrive for our POS, although we use Square for a little bit, because they were better set up at first to be able to do these online or delivery orders. But our team in Arrive, which is based out of here in Colorado, very quickly, their coders got to work and got a platform up and going that instantly integrated. So that helped a lot. But for us, really, that still was very slim pickings, we knew. So our quick pivot was to get into cans. we've been very methodical in our 5 years, and we are probably about 1 to 2 years out of going into packaging cans. Very much like, let's take a year, work on our marketing, design, how we're going to roll out, and then went from that to our lead designer, Anna, going, hey, Anna, can you design a label in 1 week? And then, and can you do a new label once a week after that for 5 more weeks? So we've really pushed a lot in our core team that we still have flowing. We kept on our full-time designer, knowing that was a huge part of what our pivot was going to be. So first we did some mobile canning, and we had some good canning companies out here, but those quickly got gobbled up. And then kind of good timing on one of these things was Wild Goose, which is right out here about 30 minutes from us, had just launched their new kind of mini canning line called the Gosling. And we had seen it before at a conference. And so quickly we knew they had their first beta ones out. We were able to work with them. And I think we got the second one off the line, and they've been very helpful of extending. We actually are purchasing it, and with terms and, with everything else, with no cash flow, they've been great. And so we've got that off the ground running, and we've done a can release about once a week now for about 5 weeks. Nice. So yeah, unless I know there's a lot of other talk, so we can talk about marketing and all that later too.
Yeah, one of the things that I love is talking about adjusting to the times, is how some of your musical performers have been adjusting to the times for your to-go orders. You want to talk a little about that?
Oh yeah, so the music's a big part of it. My co-partner and I both met through, in school, but touring in punk rock bands, and that's kind of been a core of back to connecting with beer when we got into it. So we have a lot of bands. We just had our 5-year anniversary with some great bands that stopped through. We'll do sessions to promote our local venues. So we've actually had a lot of them either reach out or us, and usually about once a week now on Fridays, we kind of do a virtual happy hour session where we'll have some of these artists that have been here before play. So we've had the Flatliners out of Canada, and then we have Spanish Love Songs out of LA playing one today. We've even had artists here locally on their to-go pickup orders pop out of their sunroofs and play a song that we're recording. And it's something we can do, even though we're minimizing down on Facebook and Instagram, much less than we used to. It's still something to connect through. And then we even had a band reach out. We did a beer collab with them, and they launched a t-shirt. They're called Red City Radio. And so they designed a shirt, selling that with a combo with a blood orange IPA that we're doing. So some of those things have been really awesome, of back to the community, and the musicians we work with are back helping us now too.
Thanks, Jason. And now we'll move out to the West Coast, where Mike and Teddy are probably just waking up, and we'll talk about how you guys went from not a short-term pivot, but a hard pivot for the future for your company.
Yeah. So when this all started, we were about 85% in keg, and we had just launched the canning line February 3rd, I believe. So we were pretty new into canning.
Our own line was installed at the end of February.
So definitely dodged the bullet there. But as this started, it was pretty clear we weren't going to get a whole bunch of concrete information. So we always like to be proactive as best we can and create plans for, the month, the 90-day plan, all that kind of stuff in these calendars. And within, California shut down pretty early, and we made the decision let's start getting ourselves in positions to react rather than being trying to make assumptions based on anything, because there's just not a lot of information in the beginning.
Yeah.
So we were making hourly plans. How are we going to get through this? Daily plans. How are we going to get through this? And out of that, we decided to take a look at kind of who we considered our end customer. So we dove in head first to really end consumer, which was not a market that we were too deeply in. And what I mean by that is the focus was always selling to chain or hospitality groups or whatever. And this is we need to get beer to where people actually are still going. So that was a big pivot for us. And within 2 weeks, we'd switched over from 85% draft to 100% canned. And we had just adopted every single online platform we possibly could. We're Grubhub, Postmates, all that kind of stuff, to go orders, with safety being paramount. Our biggest thing was like, we're going to take a hit no matter what, but nothing's going to be as bad as if somebody gets it and we infect ourselves or whatever happens and we end up shutting down for indefinitely. Really, we wouldn't know when to come back. So really just trying not to make too many hard assumptions, and just not panic really was like a huge part. Yeah. Stay calm and get yourself in a position to give yourself options down the road as things start opening back up. So, yeah.
And you guys took it a step further and actually sent some of your product to get made into a hand sanitizer, right?
Oh yeah, that was one thing. We obviously were sitting on quite a few kegs.
Yeah, we kept walking in that cold box like, my God, what are we going to do with all this? We have no idea when this is going to end, and this is not going to taste good on the other side. So we got to do something.
Luckily, there's a company in town that you know the process better than me.
Yeah, it's de-alkalized. They make NA beers, and they're like 2 blocks away from us here. So we hooked up with them, and we were able to convert it all over to ethanol. And we're going to sell some straight ethanol to breweries for basically an ISO replacement, and then we're going to make a whole bunch of hand sanitizer to give away some and to sell some as well.
We're going to use basically the revenue that we get from selling to, whether it be breweries or whatever, or direct to consumer out of the tap room, to fund basically giving away like half of it to first responders, hospitals, UPS, like a lot of people who can't get it right now, the post office. So we're pretty excited about that. And then the other thing was opening up. It's accelerated a lot of the plans that we kind of had that we saw as long term.
You know? Yeah, like the 3-year plan.
Yeah, the 3-year plan became like the 2-month plan, really, between opening up Northern California, spreading out into LA. These are all things that we're like, year 3 from here, we'll open up the LA market. That their first delivery lands on Monday. So really, like I said, just being like reactive and not losing sight of who you are. Really, like we don't want to do these things out of panic and then put out beer that we're not proud of. So that's still been a big focus for us.
Yeah, a lot of the beginning was just like, all right, what's in tank? What's going to survive? How can we make this thing spin around? We had a bunch of lager that was sitting in tank. And same thing you were talking about, talking to your designer. Like, can you make us a label today that we can put on this beer? So we've pivoted. We never planned on putting that in cans, and now we've got a whole bunch of lager in cans because of it. Because
rewriting the entire release calendar and production calendar has been pretty big too. It's like we all like to do fun stuff, right? Fancy new IPAs, but we just don't see there's not a lot of promise in that market right now. We're just trying to get beer to where people are, grocery store, that kind of, maybe corner liquor store if they're close. But we put a real heavy focus on core beers and just what you're most likely to grab when your focus is elsewhere. Like, we have not had the illusion that, like, I don't want to say it. Maybe it is important to a bunch of people, but it just seems like right now with everything going on, like potentially craft beer is not forefront in people's minds. So it's probably something they're grabbing while they're like fighting people at the grocery store trying to find, paper towels or whatever. So it's like, how can we live in that world now? How can we make this work? And it was like a good price point on core consistent beers was kind of what we came up with.
Yeah. That's great. Give the people what they want, right?
Yeah, I hope so.
All right, so now we talked, thanks everybody. So now we talked about how we got through the pandemic or how we got to where we are now. So now time to kind of throw on your future goggles and let's look to see what that future looks like. What's the new normal in this space? And so for the second round of questioning, we got another poll that will go ahead and pop up and we'll get the behind this. So if state law allows in 6 months, which tactic do you think will bring in the most revenue? And so we've got some of the things that were in play that we mentioned up at this point, but now we've added in the tap room. So now when you know, moving forward, is the tap room, did any of these overcome the tap room? You know, where does it slot in? If this was your, you know, fantasy football lineup, or is it going to slot with all these other tactics? And so go ahead and answer that, and we'll pull up those results here in a little bit. And while I get to the next question that we can start working on, now we're back to the East Coast and working west again. And so we're talking about, again, the future of the industry. What is that new normal? Is e-commerce and direct-to-consumer models here to stay? Are there any challenges that you foresee in the future? What's the new tap room going to look like? You know, are these tables going to be all dotted around the place? Are there going to be people sitting shoulder to shoulder at the rail bar? And what safety measures are being put in place in this new normal? And so again, starting on the East Coast, Ben, we'll go ahead and kick it off with you.
Yeah, if I had the real crystal ball, I'm sure my phone would be ringing a little bit more than it is. So I'll tell you what I think, and if it helps some people, I think that'd be great. For Wormtown, what we're doing is we're looking at trying to be where the consumer is. So, you know, our lead package is a 4-pack of 16-ounce cans, and I think that, you know, that used to be a great place to be. You could get some really good margin on it, and people were willing to buy, you know, a couple a week, or maybe they'd go to the store every 2 days and find the new ones from, you know, the new brand or the new one from our brewery. But right now, I believe consumers are going to the store as little as possible and buying as much as possible. You know, we haven't quite seen the run on beer like we have toilet paper, but there's definitely people grabbing 12 packs, 24 packs, 30 packs. I think I've seen some 99 packs on the internet. So I think the larger format is going to be where some of these consumers are thinking, at least you know, for this year and into the future, and enjoying some beers at home. So we're designing a 12-pack, and we're going to be putting some of our 16-ounce cans in 12-ounce cans and putting them into the 12 packs and sending those out to the more traditional channels for us, you know, in the Northeast. That's some of the chain stores that are a little bit bigger and probably more prominent in the rest of the country. Aren't particularly big in Massachusetts, but they are in New Hampshire and some of the other areas in New England that we do distribute. So doing those big packs and continuing to slowly increase our distribution footprint into areas that we were going to go naturally. We'll just do that a little bit quicker. And for the first time ever, our lead effort in those areas will be bottles and cans. We always led with draft. We thought the interaction between the bars and restaurants and the consumers and seeing our beer on tap gave the best representation of who we are, and allowed those retailers to help tell our story so that when they saw it in the store, they would be comfortable picking it up, and they already had the sampling opportunity. Unfortunately, that's just not even a possibility now, and I think it'll be limited into the future. So all those new areas will be serviced with bottles and cans first, and we'll rely on our marketing team and our sales team to do the groundwork to get out to those retailers and help tell our story ahead of time. So it's just a little bit of a different focus than before. But I do think that all these bars and restaurants when they open are going to have limited capacity. They'll have, you know, health and safety measures as a number one focus. So most people will probably be wearing masks like we all have somewhere close to us right now. And you'll probably only be sitting with the group of people you come in with and not interacting with too many other people. So I think the volume that can go through those traditional pathways of on-premise is going to be limited for a pretty significant period of time. We're already looking at our staff wearing masks in the facility all the time now. And when we do have a chance to open up our tap rooms, we have 2 of them, they'll be even more measures in place with hand sanitizer everywhere, masks, gloves where it makes sense, and certainly limiting the number of people in there so the staff and the consumers feel comfortable being in that environment. So I would say that all the beer that's going to be coming back from retailers that are going to be opening up, we will push to a local distillery to make into sanitizer. It's kind of an unknown quantity for us. I know there's been a lot of articles written about it recently in some major news publications. There's a lot of beer out there that's coming back, and hopefully not going to wastewater. Hopefully it'll go somewhere good where it can be used. So the ethanol market's a great one, and so is the hand sanitizer for the non-frontline people that are also at risk. You guys talked about package delivery people, U.S. Postal Service. Those are great places to put it. And Carrie can probably talk a little bit about tightening up some of our dream big scenarios that we had going on. Those have been put on the back burner indefinitely, and we're definitely just going to be concentrating on our core situation, which is making beer, packaging it, and not doing too much on the financial side that could put us at risk.
And our poll came back, and it looks like distribution number 1, tap room number 2 was the overarching theme. Is that how you see it, or do you think there's a chance that e-commerce kind of overtakes the tap room at some point in the future?
So we're a distributing brewery. My vote was on distribution, so I skewed the numbers that way. I think some of these other guys have a better position to talk about how that's going to affect them. We're definitely doubling down on distribution and our traditional channels, and hope that our tap rooms, which we've only had our tap room at our flagship production facility for about 5 years now, and we just opened up less than a year ago a facility at Patriot Place next to Gillette Stadium. So there's an arena that isn't going to be packed anytime soon, and will certainly have a lot less customers there than we were hoping in 2020.
All right, Carrie, I'll let you chime in.
The only thing I would add, certainly it seems like the consumer is looking for core brands, things that they're used to. They're looking for something, maybe some certainty, right, with all this uncertainty. And as Ben said, we're looking at larger pack sizes. We're primarily 4-pack, 16-ounce, very a good package. A consumer, it pulls really nice, profitable for everybody. And then looking at larger pack size, I guess just a caution for everybody. The pricing models change entirely. You run your scenarios and you look at where you need to be price-wise, and then you back it up to the margins for the brewery. So you're really looking at, from a brewery, if you go through a wholesaler, your wholesaler's margin, your retailer's margin, and getting it on the shelf at a competitive price becomes challenging. The math just starts to work against you. So I would just put that out there as a thing to keep your eyeballs on as you explore larger pack sizes, to really make sure you understand the pricing and the margin impact as you're doing your financial planning. I think the last thing I would say is, this really forces, it's an opportunity to really speed up a lot of things. I think the panelists have spoken to that. A 3-year plan becomes a 2-month plan, right? I mean, you don't have the luxury of kind of spinning your wheels and thinking about it. You have to act and you have to execute, and you're going to make some mistakes. But, right now we really don't have any choice. I think it's interesting to see that. It's also interesting to look at our business for more of a diversification standpoint. Whoever thought this could happen, right? Other than the insurance companies who wrote it out of their coverages. But, we're now in a situation where we got to look at the beer industry, what's coming, and really start to think creatively, be able to adapt, be agile, and certainly, looking at new revenue streams wherever we can find them. Certainly e-commerce, I don't think that's going away. I think the consumer is going to find, certainly laws are going to be different, but I think the consumer is going to find that very convenient as well. Quick grab and go type stuff, at least in the interim as we work our way out of this.
Cool. Thanks, Gary. So Eric, based on that survey, did you get a vote in there? And I'm curious the explanation for your vote.
Sure. I also voted distribution, and some of that is, I mean, seeing what we have already done, we have a just wide distribution throughout Colorado already. That also has already kind of been one of our bigger sources, or higher percentage of our total revenue coming from that distribution side. And we're looking at, and nothing set in stone of what a more stable out of state distribution might also look like. We partnered with different distributors all throughout the country for festivals and things like that, and we were able to work with them for some kind of drops here and there this past month. And now just seeing if something like that is also sustainable, with that idea of diversification, that we know that as we see people continuing to be laid off. I mean, Colorado, one thing, especially in Weld County, hitting us now is we're big in the energy sector with oil, and so now that's hitting us. So we're seeing all these effects, the aftermath of who is getting hit, and it just kind of keeps trickling through different areas. And realizing that if we can get our product out into the hands and exposure of more people who are seeking it and able to snatch it up, that's definitely going to help. When it comes to probably the big question that we get both from our staff, especially the tap room, is just of course, when will the tap room open? That's always the big one. And then what will it look like? And those are things we're still working on. But my thought going into it is looking at this as an opportunity to kind of reboot what the taproom experience will look like, that we get to shape what that gets to be for our area, for our communities, what will work best. And I think we'll see a whole lot of cool different models, that there's not just the one size fits all that says, here's how you're going to do it. Everyone's going to have different ideas that I think will make it a cool experience coming in. And there's going to be the safety measures, and it might be awkward at first to see like the person serving you a beer is wearing a mask. But I think we'll get more and more used to that as restaurants probably do the same, and as other, all of us are doing it. And so for me, that's kind of the exciting piece. In our area, Greeley, we have no big sports team that everyone travels to. We don't have much, but we have Weldwerks. So that's what drives, and we have Wiley Roots just right near us. And so kind of between the two of us, that kind of drives the beer culture to Greeley to check out those two breweries. And so for us, it's trying to think, well, what's the best model? Because thinking of someone who might be driving from Denver or even more south, like Colorado Springs, can we find ways, either maybe through reservations or something, so that they know that they're going to actually get into the tap room and not just drive all this way and then be stuck outside in the line, or be like, well, it's going to be 2 hours before you can get in. And so we're looking at different possibilities, but with that, maybe pair some sort of experience, because we'll be working with a group of just there won't be as much mingling. Can we provide some sort of experience or information, kind of like a beer tasting tour of with kind of more in depth, or do something on our barrel aging side of going more in depth about where the barrels came from and the blends and all that, just to provide that experience, which for me really kind of elevates that taproom serving position. So it's not as much of this, like, you're in a mask and gloves and like, here's your beer, and you're wiping everything down. Like, we'll do all those things, but can we give them, everyone coming in, a great experience, and give our taproom staff the ability to do what they want to do, is share the knowledge and share about the beer. So I'm excited looking at those opportunities, and I think that's kind of the goal going into this, is seeing what are the opportunities we have, and let's be creative, because we have the time to think about what everything could look like. And we'll continue to kind of branch out and see what we can do on the distribution side, and some of these models, like the e-commerce or ordering online, I see it sticking around for a while, and maybe it becomes permanent even when there's a vaccine or something. Maybe this is a model that works well, and for us, we're someday going to open up a spot in Colorado Springs once government start getting moving again and we can get that process rolling. And it might be a model that works well for us because that's going to be a smaller space. And so it's a way that people could order beer online who just want the to-go beer and stop by that tap room as well. So this gives us kind of a practice to see what that could look like and have a better idea of how to implement it in a different space. And I see it just happening. I mentioned to some folks of, I think of some of our regulars that just because of, the situations they're in, either health-wise or family members health-wise, they're not going to be stepping into our tap room because they can't take that risk to just be around a lot of people. And so for those who are been loyal to any of our establishments is, keeping up with just different options will keep them engaged and excited to get our beer, and we're not cutting them out just because things opened up and then they can't come back in. And then we'll still work also with our community efforts. We've also done hand sanitizer. We've paired up with distilleries in both Denver and up in Wyoming to produce some hand sanitizer, and we've donated it to different community efforts. And now we're working with a local community partner to kind of hand off some of the main logistics of the ordering and whatnot. Like we'll produce the liquid and we'll work with that, and then we'll get it into the hands of people that can kind of distribute it out as businesses open up. We get more calls every day of like, hey, I'm opening up and they're requiring me to have sanitizer, can't find it anywhere. And so we'll continue that. And we've also just found partnerships through buying tanks and whatnot that just out of China, we've been able to source masks for cities, for Greeley, and for hospitals that need it and things like that. So continuing to use those relationships and be creative in seeing what sort of, the vendors we work with, do they have any partnerships that we can also help our community out. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. And so Jason, I think if you had a mantra, your two-word mantra would be flexible, right? Unmute, and then you could tell me your mantra.
Yes. Yeah. It's like be flexible. As the society guys were saying, it's, now that the ramp up, instead of trying to guess ahead, I think everyone's been terrible at guessing. So now it's getting into that model of, well, be prepared as you can so that you can go with the flow or go with whatever changes. And for us, on the way down, I think their first was a thought of, if we can get through these 6 weeks, there'll be a little bit of ramp up and we'll be back. And I think, very quickly, I'm sure everyone here, that idea is gone now, that it's just going, be a quick ramp up somehow, or even that will be the same company when we return. So the one interesting thing is Ben had mentioned the other day, there's not going to be any set delineation point or a guaranteed, here's where things are back to normal. Even here in Colorado, where it's going to safer at home, there will be these steps, but that doesn't mean it's just going to be a slow change or ramps of things. My old boss was a technical director at Miller Coors, and he said they've been in conference calls saying, hey, even when bars and restaurants can open, they're starting to plan for draft sales being lower at certain establishments, not based on people scared to go out, but literally maybe not wanting to drink out of glassware. And and I hadn't even really thought about that part. Now, I think that'll change. We're at a tap room in the heart of Denver. Our busy period skewed to the 21 to 35-year-olds. We get a wide range, earlier in the day. But I think we'll have less issue at our tap room. But like I said, we distributed 500 or 600 places in Denver. We have to realize, hey, even if the restaurants can open at 100% capacity, some of these ones, if they cater to an older crowd, maybe they're not comfortable drinking out of normal glassware. So that'll be interesting if we go to disposable or how that works. But it's just being prepared for all those options. So back to the canning we're doing, we thought maybe we'd phase out of that a bit and then re-plan and go in. But for now, to be more reactive, like society said, we'll keep going with that because maybe it'll phase out back to some draft come in. But right now we can have some cans toe the line a little bit. And then part of your quiz, for us, obviously taproom's a big revenue driver, even though now we've flipped to our bulk of our volume goes outside. But tap rooms are obviously great for revenue. So that'll be big, but the e-commerce will be an important, I think, extension. We really didn't do a lot of to-go, and people weren't used to going to brewery websites to see if they could order anything. I mean, we did crowlers, but it was just if you were here and take it to go. I think that world's changing, and probably for good, where the people realize, oh, hey, I can do these orders, pre-place ahead of time. The way our system works, it spits it out on the chit. We can just pre-prep the order. It's a really clean system. And then the other one, like Arrived, our POS had launched an app right before this, and it was basically a touchless pay where you could open your tab or close your tab without having to go back to the front. Still have to show an ID, but you know, people are pretty hesitant before this of downloading any new apps. You know, oh great, one more app for some like pay system. But I think once again, everyone's willing to try anything. I mean, everyone's downloading 20 apps. I mean, the amount of people that downloaded that house party app, they would have never downloaded it. Now it's like everyone's on every new app that you hear about just to try it out, because why not? So I think we'll see a big, that will continue even after all the restrictions lift.
Perfect. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah.
And Mike and Teddy, I'll let you look into the crystal ball and tell us what you see.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about morale a little bit. So when this all hit, none of us really had any idea what was going on, and we had to make the really tough decision to furlough pretty much everybody. There's 4 people coming into the brewery for 2 weeks, and all the employees were it was the hardest thing ever, and everyone was so receptive. They totally understood whatever they could do, however they could help. It's been amazing. And now that we've brought them back, you know, we've had to kind of segment everybody. The production, the brewers are in one space, the packagers are in another. We're trying to keep everything safe. So you'd think communication wouldn't be as good, but because of this feeling that we're all in this together and we're trying to figure things out, everyone is willing to do whatever we need to do. You know, like some of the guys are working later shifts or earlier shifts. No one's complained. Everyone is fully on board with how can we work together to make this happen, which it's been a really interesting thing to see. And we've been able to really reassess how we go about our production team. You know, we've really focused on efficiency has always been an important thing, but when you go to the brink and you see that it could possibly not be a company, it's like, all right, everything that we're doing moving forward, we're going to make a little bit of a difference to make this company move forward. So everyone's been really receptive. Like, we're like trying to be as creative as we can, obviously maintaining quality, but how can we tighten up our efficiencies, and how can we get a little bit more juice out of every single one of our turns, especially transitioning from kegs to cans. That's been a really, I wish I could say it's been really smooth, but we're definitely learning things each day. So, but everyone, you know, we'll have a rough day and we'll kind of sit back down like, all right, what happened? How can we get better across the board? And everyone, like the other day we had a rough day and there was a pack op guy that was just yelling because he could see how much beer we were losing. He could see how much revenue that was for the company. So everyone's kind of got this rallying cry that we're like, all right, we're going to do this together and we're going to make this happen. So that's been on the employee morale side, that's been an interesting thing to see. I never would have thought that.
For the tasting room, we're doing like the weekly meeting. Every Monday we call the company on a Zoom meeting and kind of give them like a rundown, like here's what we're doing, here's what we're thinking, here's kind of an outlook for the week. And then on Thursdays we meet on a Zoom call afternoon. Show up if you can, if you don't. And we all just like have a beer and just talk about stuff. So like maintaining that sense of community is really big, like making people feel like they are still tied into this place, even if they can't be here. As far as taproom outlook, I mean, I don't know if I'm kind of operating under the assumption that it until there's like a vaccine or something like that, it may never go back to like everyone hanging out. Like our whole tap room is made out of like wood. So unless we're like going to knock out the entire tap room again and like make it all out of like stainless steel, the glass, it's not just like patron safety, it's also employee safety. Like people interacting with all these, who knows what people are doing in their free time. So I think e-commerce probably sticks around, but I definitely listed distribution. For the first, how many weeks have we been doing this? Does anybody know? I have no clue. I don't even know what day it is anymore. It's like, it feels like a really long time. But tap room and shipping direct to consumer through like e-commerce has actually outpaced distribution, because distribution took such a huge hit as we, lost 80% of kind of where we were selling our beer. But the changes that we've made on just kind of how we see the whole business, like our whole business model, we're like, well, let's just change it because this is not going to work. I do think now distribution will catch back up and then far exceed kind of what just our direct to consumer shipping can do. So we're pretty, it's actually like exciting, like all these things like, oh, I can't wait until this day when we could do this thing. And it's like, now the conversation is like, we better do this right now or we are going to be in a bad spot. So yeah, I mean, I'm not particularly optimistic for things to like go back to normal. I think this is just how we operate until, like I said, until maybe when there's a vaccine or when 60% of the people are vaccinated and there's like, we can start to get a handle on this situation. But for now, we're shipping and we are distributing quite a bit.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your thoughts on that. And now's a good time to remind everybody, if you have a question, you can go ahead and put it down in the Q&A. And we do have one question, so I'll pitch this to the group and we'll go around the horn here. Of the breweries that are able to do so, what percentage of total business is e-commerce or direct-to-consumer delivery? And I think Wormtown, your distribution said, I can pass it on to Eric unless you want to take that one.
Carrie's probably got the numbers, but we never had a very high percentage of revenue come through our tap rooms, and it's certainly been reduced now. So we're definitely in the low single digits at this point.
Eric, you want to take that?
Yeah, and I guess kind of us, the e-commerce part is, ours is set up where it primarily still goes through the tap room. Service companies like Tavor to do more of a direct to consumer. We didn't hop on to do deliveries, and mainly I think just kind of our location and what that driving would be like to different areas of Colorado. For our kind of online sales that we do through Square, I would say about probably like 85 to 90% come through there, versus people just kind of coming right up into walking right outside our tap room little setup we have to order beer just right there. So we see a lot that go through the online portion of how we set that up.
Jason? You still got the mute on there.
Trying to not feedback. Sorry about that. Yeah, the actual delivery to consumers, we are doing it. We're self-distributed. And so in the same way where we had a sales and one of our distribution kind of person, it was a fairly easy for us to at least do it. It's not been a big driver. Once again, our sales are way down anyways. Now that we're in cans and getting back into some off-premise, it's actually rising off of a small number, but percentage-wise, the growth is looking good off a tiny number. But maybe 10% of our normal daily sales are delivery to a consumer at most. A little like Eric was saying, but this shift to online ordering out of our tap room, I think that's really increased our sales for pickup to go. We saw it, maybe a lot of you did. I think there was an initial, I wouldn't call it sympathy buy, but maybe right as this was happening, people were like, all right, we're going to go support, small business, friends, family, of the brewery. And we had a nice surge that first week or so, but we knew that was going to drift away as more people got laid off, as they start tightening their belts. But as it went on longer and people realized, hey, I still want to have beer, and what's this new normal? I think the idea of being able to order it, to come pick it up or come by on their walks and get it and already have it ordered, that's driven that's increased our sales probably as much as delivering direct to consumer.
Mike and Teddy, you want to take a stab at what percent?
Yeah, so before this started, like I said, we were about 85% of the volume was kegs to like outside accounts. And then tasting room was roughly time of year 25 to 30% of the revenue. Within like a week, tasting room became just shy of like 60% of the revenue, and now it's starting to creep kind of back. Distribution starting to overtake. Within about 3 weeks, distribution will start outpacing the revenue that we make from the tasting room. And I'm lumping tasting room and e-commerce, shipping, all that stuff together. So that's really, I mean, that for a while that was like a triage situation, but it saved us. Like that.
The tasting room e-commerce kind of snuck up on us. We looked in the cold box one day and we're like, wait, what's going on here? Where did it go?
Yeah,
it was a pretty good avenue for us.
It's not a realm that we would probably have done.
Right now.
Yeah, just it's just not where we were at. But I mean, it's been, like I said, it makes up over just a shade over like half of our revenue right now. So it's been helpful for sure. But yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys. We have a couple minutes here, so we'll just wrap it up. Again, we'll run around the horn from east to west. And I think the last thing we want to leave people with is for the people that are joining us and the people that will watch us in the future, what's one piece of advice you'd give to other breweries that are in the same kind of situation? And we'll go ahead and start with you, Ben.
So I think everybody can tell by listening to all the other people on the call, we've all, had some pretty big obstacles to overcome over the last month, and you never know what one thing is going to kind of either save the business or become the hallmark of the company. So I would encourage everybody to try, as long as it's legal, everything in your ability to do something different and find out what's going to work for them. And even if it's something that you thought was something you never would want to do, like go into distribution or drive a delivery van around like an ice cream truck in your neighborhood and sell beer, it may work. And it could be the thing that you become known for. So that's the one thing I would say is leave no stone unturned in this current environment to try to find your thing.
Thanks, Ben. Carrie?
Yeah, I'm kind of like a broken record on this. On the finance side, focus on your cash flow. You're out of cash, you're out of business. So that would probably be advice number one, is set up some tools, watch it, do whatever you can, as Ben said, to bring in any revenue, watch any outgoing expenses like a hawk. And then when we get out of this, to not forget and to do as much proactive planning for the next time. And that means really kind of, access to capital, working with your lenders, outside investors, putting yourself in a position where you always talk like about a rainy day fund, right? It's going to rain again. So I think from a finance side, really just thinking about, all right, we're going to get through this, and let's not forget, let's learn some lessons from this, and, really beef up the financial side of things too.
Thanks, Gary. Eric?
I would say it's leaning in on with your teams and people. I keeping that culture that you've already created, and keep that up. I think my Siri is going off over here, so I don't know if it's coming through, but keep leaning on people, because we don't have all the answers. Like as leaders, we don't have the crystal ball. We don't have all the answers to say this is how everything's going to be. And someone on any of our teams might have that one idea that if we're, share ideas and implement, different things. I think that's going to be a big piece through all of this, is to just keep relying on the people that have helped come to each of our places to build up what we've created, and working with our staff. And we have some of ours doing these different online webinars to keep people engaged and things like that. So it's been a lot of fun. So that'd be my advice.
Cool. Thanks, Eric. And Jason?
Yeah, to echo everyone a little bit, I think this idea of it can feel so overwhelming, all these things. So it's once you kind of set a little bit of what you think you're going forward, it's just like one foot in front of the other and make that attempt. I heard about struggling with canning lines, right? We've had 3 different canning lines in, and now we have this mini one. And it's easy to be like, oh my God, now we're learning something new, and you get used to your normal path, but just going, well, here's today, what did we learn today? And not trying to let the whole thing overwhelm you, because it can quickly. The one other thing I was going to say, almost what Carrie was saying with financials, my partner's more on the business side, accounting, but is also reach out, lean on some advisors for those areas you don't know. We've had really good success, both if you have accountants, even our insurance folks, lawyers, and maybe not even charging you, have been pretty good advisors for the areas. There's so many things we have to think about now. What you don't want to do, and I'm worried about other, friends' places, are they thinking about like that, the finance in the midst of it all? You're just trying to hold on to your business. And we've had a few good advisors really kind of do that cash flow analysis with us, sit down, especially on the way down, and realize, okay, this is going to happen quick, especially when we were draft only. This is what you've got to shore up. This is what you have to stop. Here's the reality. And then it made it a lot easier. They were very matter of fact. They can be a little bit removed emotionally and be a little bit more objective to allow us to then, okay, here's our company. Well, thank you for the info, and now here's how we're going to use it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. And Mike and Teddy.
So yeah, to the previous point, accountants have really been kind of the unsung heroes of the situation, helping us kind of sift through all this and figure out, we're talking about pivoting, but you could make a bad pivot in this situation easily. So I think best of takeaways were like, don't panic. Yeah. Be friends with the people that you work with, because it was an interesting couple weeks.
Yeah, don't take it personal when the stress is high. Allow the ideas to flow, but just stay calm, and don't have the try to check the hubris at the door. I think early on someone was like yelling at me about, what are we going to do about this? What's going to happen with it? And it's like, you know what? It's likely me.
I don't know. I've never operated a brewery through a pandemic. So we're going to calmly talk about this. We're going to work through some options. Yeah. Like a lot of whiteboarding, brainstorming has kind of gotten us through the situation. A lot of fighting with Ted.
Yeah. A
lot of fighting with Ted. Yeah. But I feel like we're all, if it accelerated business plans, it also accelerated like the learning curve. I feel like we're all like way better now than we were when this started. So
yeah, like when things arise, just like take a deep breath. All right, how are we going to tackle this? We know the pieces we got. We know what we need to assess, and then just figure it out from there.
You get good at operating in like complete meltdown and uncertainty. Now it's like, I'm fine. Like whatever happens, I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. We'll figure it out.
Well, that's great. Well, you can mark that off your bucket list, operating your pandemic. So this has been great, guys. Thanks for joining us for the Overcoming a Crisis webinar. A special thanks to our brewery partners for your guys' time and your valuable insights. Again, a recording of the session will be available on the ECOS YouTube channel shortly, and you can get all of the webinars that occurred this week on there as well, so you can catch it. And with that, I just want to say stay safe, have a great weekend, and cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.